Hello, I'm Waqar Rizvi, and this is Scope. A trilateral meeting between the Afghan, Chinese, and Pakistani officials in Kabul today seeks progress on the fight against terrorism, trade, and other areas of cooperation. Prime Minister Imran Khan has spoken of how the Pakistani call for talks with the Taliban has been proven right, now that even the United States is pushing for them. To discuss these and other related topics, we're joined now by Mr. Aziz Ahmed Khan, who is a former diplomat, joining us live from Islamabad. And we're also joined by Mr. Zubair Babarkhail, who is a journalist, joining us live from Kabul. Thank you both for joining us. Mr. Khan, I'll put that question to you as we sort out our technical difficulties. Mr. Khan, what do you make of this meeting as it took place in Kabul? Seemingly a memorandum of understanding, I should say, has been signed about counter-terrorism efforts. How important are such measures on the part of all three countries?
Terrorism is a serious issue which affects all the three countries. And but Pakistan has been talking about it also, and Pakistan has been asking for close cooperation between Afghanistan and Pakistan to be able to tackle this menace jointly. We have our concerns about terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, just as Afghans have concerns about issues of security within Afghanistan. So it is important that the two countries and the trilateral cooperation particularly takes place so that both the countries can cooperate in fighting this menace.
And how important is the role of China in all of this, Mr. Khan, in bringing Pakistan and Afghanistan also to the table and talking to each other and signing these agreements?
Well, China and Pakistan have been cooperating with Afghanistan since a very long time about the settlement of for bringing peace in Afghanistan and for a negotiated settlement of conflict inside Afghanistan. And for that, if you recall, Pakistan, China, the US and Afghanistan were part of the quadrilateral group that was trying to promote negotiations with the Taliban and promote peace in Afghanistan and settlement, negotiated settlement with the Taliban since a long time. So it is right in the same line that Pakistan continues with its efforts. And as Prime Minister Imran Khan stated, I think, yesterday in Peshawar, that Pakistan has been persuading the Taliban to go to the negotiating for the peaceful negotiations. They have agreed to talk to the US, and hopefully, as time passes, they will also agree to talk to the Afghan government so that a negotiated settlement can be found.
You know, I'm glad you brought up Prime Minister Imran Khan, Mr. Aziz Ahmed, because the Prime Minister did say that even that country, and he was obviously talking about the United States, which has asked Pakistan to do more, has now asked for Pakistan's help to bring the Taliban, the Afghan Taliban that is, to the table for the peace process. How much of a change do you think this is in the US policy towards the entire Afghan issue?
Pakistan has been advocating since a very long time that the only solution of the Afghan situation is through a negotiated settlement. But the US had chosen to find a kinetic solution to the whole problem. And now finally they have heeded our advice and they have realized that the only way out is so that all parties involved inside Afghanistan talk to each other and go for a negotiated settlement. So it is in a way what Pakistan had been advocating has finally been heeded.
And why do you think it has taken so long? Because Pakistan, as you said, Mr. Khan, has wanted this peace process for a very long time. Why have its requests been ignored for so long, and why now has there been this change?
I mentioned to you just a minute ago that the US thought that a kinetic solution could be found, that they can fight it out, but now they have realized that was a mistake, and that the only way out is a negotiated settlement. It's good that they have finally gotten around to that, because this would save lives. This would reduce the misery that the Afghans are suffering, and particularly the common man is suffering. And all the warring factions and the Afghan government will sit together and find a negotiated settlement. And since the U.S. forces are present there, they have to play an important role in that.
All right, we're also joined now by Mr. Zubair Babarkhair, who is a journalist who is joining us live now from Kabul itself. Mr. Zubair, thank you for joining us here in The Scope. What can you tell us, Mr. Zubair, about your understanding of today's meetings, especially, of course, the memorandum of understanding that has been signed between China, Afghanistan and Pakistan?
Thank you so much. I think it's a good step taken forward that after a while there was a trilateral meeting. Today in Kabul, the Pakistani foreign minister was here beside Chinese, and they met with the Afghan foreign minister, and they signed MOU to anti-terror to fight the terrorism in the country. I think there were so many more meetings in the past, and there were discussions. There were even bigger meetings on the bigger stages regarding fighting terrorism in Afghanistan and bringing peace into this country. But I think it is a good political step that is taken, which will maybe help to strengthen relation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, especially since we have seen a nightmare in their relations. But I think it's not going to impress Afghan nation because Afghans have seen such efforts a lot, unless there is a practical step taken especially from the Pakistani side, and that can show that Pakistan is now honestly working both and fight against the terrorism and helping the Taliban, and also pressurizing the Taliban groups to come forward.
Okay, so Mr. Zubair, if I may come in, because you spoke about the Afghan nation is expecting something practical. So what is the Afghan nation expecting from Pakistan?
Now in Afghanistan, the common view which we have seen, every single Afghan believes and have seen evidence and clear signs of the Pakistani support to the Taliban, not even directly, maybe if it is not, but indirectly, because when the winter starts, most of the Taliban fighters disappears, and when they show up in the spring in Afghanistan for their spring offensives, not like in Kabul, but definitely in the villages where they meet the villagers, they share their stories. I mean, like, a normal Taliban fighter is not that great, doesn't understand the politics that great. You know, they will definitely tell them, "Oh, we have had a nice time back there in Pakistan. It was a nice weather out there. It's chilly in Afghanistan." So many more signs, you know. So the great signs that the Pakistani government has shown recently was the release of one of the Taliban leaders, Mullah Biradar, who was jailed by the Pakistani authorities as soon as he started building connections with the Afghan leaders for peace talks and reconciliation. But he was jailed for years out back there.
Okay, so Mr. Zubair, I wanted to get a reaction from Islamabad, because Mr. Aziz Ahmed, I wanted to know how you feel about what Mr. Zubair there has just mentioned. Those are certainly things that we have heard said a lot when it comes to the media, that Afghans and the Afghan government have these certain allegations against Pakistan. How do you react, Mr. Aziz Ahmed?
These allegations are not new, but these allegations are not based on reality, really. It's really furthering the facts. Taliban, according to the reports emanating from Afghanistan, these are independent reports of international media. The NATO forces have admitted that. The Afghan government has admitted that the Taliban have influence or control over 50% of Afghan territory. So they don't need to seek refuge somewhere else. They are freely controlling a lot of areas where they can, from where they operate, and they practically dictate things. So I think the best thing is, let's not get into these old allegations and counter-allegations. One has heard them for a very long time. A step has been taken where Afghanistan and Pakistan are cooperating so as to be able to bring this this situation to an end, and so that there is a negotiated settlement of the Afghan situation, so that the poor Afghans do not suffer anymore. And I think we should look at the positive sides rather than once again starting the old narratives of negativity, which has bedeviled the narrative between the two countries since a long time. I think that lots of positive steps are being taken. Committees have been formed. Action is being taken. The two countries are cooperating. Under the APAP also, they have five groups which are subcommittees which have been constituted, which are discussing all these issues which are of concern to both the countries, and a very positive atmosphere prevails. So I think we should build on that. And this particular meeting was a step in that direction. China is a neighbor of Afghanistan and Pakistan and an important country of the region, which also has been deeply involved in promoting peace in Afghanistan. And so I think it was a good step that this meeting took place.
All right, so Mr. Zubair, as Mr. Aziz Ahmed there said, he spoke about China's role in all of this. What do you think, Mr. Zubair, China's role right now is when it comes towards Afghanistan and peace there?
I think China can have a bigger role when it comes to the prospect of a Pakistani view. But I think since the U.S. and NATO is involved in Afghanistan and they are having a bigger presence here, and also on the world level, when there is a competition between U.S. and China and then India, that every country is trying to get powerful economically or militarily or politically. So I don't think China will have that bigger role in Afghanistan. Maybe U.S. would not want that, as it happened in the past when Russia tried to interfere and have some kind of like meetings. The Afghan government and the U.S. had rejected that. So, of course, China is a big country in the region, and they can have their influence, especially bringing their close allies, Pakistan, into Afghanistan, into Kabul, and having and having a discussion that might help.
All right, so Mr. Aziz Ahmed, I'm wondering, because now that NATO and the United States have been mentioned, I think it's important to talk about their ongoing role in all of this situation in Afghanistan, isn't it? Because many, I would imagine, as Mr. Aziz Ahmed, would blame NATO and America for extending this bloodshed and this war in Afghanistan. How do you feel about their role till now and going ahead?
Let's talk about now. And that is, the Americans are talking to the Taliban. The Americans have agreed that there should be a negotiated settlement to the situation in Afghanistan. And let's hope that this process moves forward, moves rapidly, and a stage is reached where, as Pakistan and everybody has agreed, that peace in Afghanistan will be, the dialogue in Afghanistan will be through dialogue, and the dialogue would be an intra-Afghan dialogue. It should be Afghan-owned and Afghan-led, and all the other countries, all the neighbors and other international community should play a role in promoting that.
But to be fair, Mr. Aziz Ahmed, the Taliban's demand is that there be no occupying forces in the country, and they're talking, of course, about American forces. How viable is that?
That's what the Americans and the Taliban are talking about. So let's see what comes out of those talks.
All right, very well. Very well. Let me put that then to Mr. Zubair. Mr. Zubair, do you think the Americans would walk away from Afghanistan as the Taliban want?
I don't think so. When there was this security pact signed with between the Afghan government and the United States, one of their main demand was to give them some bases in some major provinces. So, and I think since the U.S. got some bases in other countries, including Japan and Germany, and even like they had in Pakistan, when there is a deal with the Taliban, they would ask for at least a few bases in Afghanistan to show their presence in Afghanistan. I don't think after losing that much economy and also losing that many soldiers in Afghanistan, America would just leave us alone. I think they will have. They're having, each country have their own agendas and their goals. And I think U.S. got some of their agendas and their goals in Afghanistan too, that if they have their presence in Afghanistan, there can be, because if we see Iran right now, there is much tension between Iran and the United States. So definitely America would want some of their presence in Afghanistan to just pressurize Iran from here or any other country. So I think what would happen in the discussions that again, as we have seen during the signing of the Security Pact, U.S. would ask for some bases in Afghanistan, especially as they have strengthened the Bagram Air Base a lot. They have spent a lot of money and invested a lot of money over Bagram. Maybe that will be their target.
But Mr. Zubair, I wonder, what do Afghans, the Afghan population, what do they feel about any ongoing American role in their country?
The overall reaction is still positive towards the Americans, because every Afghan knows who lived in this country that it was a war-tattered country. It was destroyed. There was no development in the country, especially during the Taliban time. There was no rebuilding of the infrastructure and nothing. And after 2002, we can call it an overnight change in Afghanistan. I'm not talking about the war and the winning of or losing of the war. I'm talking about the Afghan people's situation and their lives and the country. It has changed a lot. It just like the rebuilding has just like boomed, So we still, Afghans still think that America helped us to get rid of the Taliban, which was a government imposed by others. And right now we are in much better situation.
Okay, Mr. Zubair,
yeah.
I'm just going to come in because I wanted to get a reaction from Mr. Aziz Ahmed there. Very quickly, if you can, Mr. Aziz Ahmed, give us your reaction there, because I do think that many people would disagree with what Mr. Zubair there just described, that they would blame America for, and I know you wanted to look forward, but if we look back for a moment, many people would blame America for continuing this war till such a point where it realized it could not win militarily. What do you make of that, Mr. Aziz Ahmed?
I think Mr. Zubair was talking about the economic development that has taken place in Afghanistan, and I think he was right to that extent that the international community and particularly the United States have invested a lot in Afghanistan in building the infrastructure, in building the institution, in stabilizing the institutional structure in Afghanistan, and that has been a very positive development. Afghanistan has a constitution. Afghanistan has all the institutions of governance in place. So that there has been a positive role there. I'm not talking about the fighting going on. It is for the Afghans to decide how to end this fighting, as Pakistan has always been maintaining that it has to be an Afghan-led process. The rest of the international community should play a supporting role, and Pakistan has been playing a very important role in trying to create a situation where that negotiated settlement is possible, because Pakistan has all along believed that there is no military solution to the situation in Afghanistan, and that the situation can only stabilize through a negotiated settlement.
Very well, gentlemen, we're going to leave it there just for the moment. As we go into a short break, we're going to say goodbye to Mr. Aziz Ahmed Khan, former diplomat who's speaking to us live from Islamabad. We appreciate his insight. And I'm going to ask Mr. Zubair to stay with us as we want to continue the conversation with him. We'll be back after this short break, continuing the discussion about these talks, these trilateral talks that have taken place in Afghanistan. Welcome back, viewers, as we're continuing our discussion about this trilateral meeting between the Chinese, Afghan, as well as Pakistani officials in the Afghan capital, Kabul. A memorandum of understanding, of course, also being signed between the three countries about anti-terror efforts that all three will put forth for Afghanistan specifically, of course. In this conversation, in this segment, we're joined by Mr. Zubair Babarkhil, who is staying with us, and he's a journalist who is joining us live from Kabul. We're also now joined by Mr. Rahimullah Yousafzai, who is an analyst, and he is joining us live from Peshawar. Mr. Rahimullah, thank you for joining us here in The Scope. What do you make, Mr. Rahimullah, about the importance of today's meeting in Kabul and the involvement of both Pakistan and China in bringing in peace and fighting terrorism in Afghanistan?
You know, it is part of a process started by the Chinese. They earlier held a trilateral commission meeting in Beijing, and it's China's efforts to try to improve relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan. This time they are holding it in Kabul, which is the right place for such kind of meetings. The Chinese believe that if the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan becomes friendly, if the differences are resolved, then they will be better able to cooperate in the fight against terrorism, and also it could lead to a very effective peace process. So that is the idea. And when Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Pakistani foreign minister, visited Kabul earlier, soon after the installation of the PTI government, and on that occasion in Kabul, and when he came back, he said that this trilateral commission with China, it would soon be meeting, because I think there were some delays and the meeting could not be held after the first one in Beijing. So that is how this meeting is taking place. I think, China, because of its very friendly relations with Afghanistan and very deep relations with Pakistan, is in a better position to play the role of a mediator. It has become increasingly interested in trying to resolve the Afghan disputes. So I think it's the right mediator, the right partner, and that's why I think both Afghanistan and Pakistan also seem to be keen to become involved in this process.
All right, so Mr. Zubair, I'm wondering what you make of this Chinese involvement. How does this play out, do you think, when it comes to trying to bring the Afghan Taliban to the peace negotiating table? Does this move that forward?
Yes, definitely. Recently, the United States, they have started their peace efforts and increased the efforts, and they have sent Zalmay Khalilzad as a special envoy to Pakistan and Afghanistan and region. So he's meeting with several leaders in the region, and there are hopes that there will be a solution. And Mr. Khalilzad, he said that there might be negotiations and an agreement with the Taliban before the upcoming presidential elections in Afghanistan. So looking to that and having such meetings that we had today in Kabul, getting China involved in that, I think in such situation, every country would try to take part and show their presence, and especially when it is about the peace of Afghanistan. China is a neighbor of Afghanistan, so definitely that will help. But again, I would say that before we talked about the Taliban presence in hideouts in Pakistan, and you called it allegations, but I would say sometimes we are not talking about allegation. If Osama is killed in Abbottabad, is that a proof or an allegation? When Akhtar Mansour was killed in Quetta, is that an allegation? Can we call it? Is it a proof? So definitely, in such a time, okay, let's forget about the past. In the future, not only China, but Pakistan, if they honestly try to take part and push the Taliban for the negotiations table, definitely it will help. And everyone hopes that, especially after the PTI government in Pakistan, people think that now this is the time that there will be some solution.
Okay, so Mr. Zubair, let me get a response to what you there said from Mr. Rahimullah. Mr. Rahimullah, what do you make again of these long-standing accusations against Pakistan when it comes to harboring certain Taliban members?
Yes, I think it's a fact that Osama bin Laden was killed in Abbottabad in Pakistan in May 2011. Mullah Akhtar Mansoor was returning from Iran when he was killed in Chaghi district of Balochistan, not in Quetta, but in Chaghi. Many other Pakistani Taliban, Afghan Taliban, Haqqani network people have also been killed or captured in Pakistan. So that is a fact, but there's also some other facts. The Pakistani Taliban leader, Maulana Fazlullah, was killed in Afghanistan. And, another top leader, Hafiz Saeed Khan Orakzai, the head of ISIS, Daesh, he was a Pakistani, he was also killed in Afghanistan. Khalifa Umar Mansoor, the mastermind of the attack on the Army Public School in Peshawar, was also killed in Afghanistan. This is also a fact that many Pakistani militants and others have found refuge in Afghanistan. It's a kind of tit for tat. So if Pakistan is allowing militants from Afghanistan to stay here, Afghanistan is either allowing them or is unable to stop them. So I think, these are issues which need to be resolved. Because if they give refuge to the other countries' enemies, then there will be, allegations and there will be, evidence will be produced. And this will not lead to any confidence-building measures. What we need now is to try to move forward. And I think that's the Chinese effort now. China is actually, is concerned about the differences between the two countries. Is also concerned about a power vacuum in Afghanistan, which can be exploited by these militants, especially the Chinese Muslim militants from the Uyghur community, the East Turkestan Islamic movement. Other countries also have their concern about these, sanctuaries in both countries. That's why I think we have to move forward.
Okay, so what I'm understanding, Mr. Zubair, is that all three countries, China included, Pakistan and Afghanistan, have obviously major concerns when it comes to militancy and terrorism of all sorts, regardless of who the groups are that we may mention, all of the above. So Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Pakistani foreign minister, after the memorandum of understanding was signed and at that press conference in Kabul, mentioned that these three countries need better border management and intelligence sharing as well between the three of them. Will that and how will that help the situation, Mr. Zubair?
I think it's a very hard thing to control the border. It's not a border, especially when it's the Fatah region or Balochistan. Over there, it's a long border, and when we ask if the Afghan government can do it, I would say no. Because the Afghan army and forces, they are still involved in the daily routine action against the terrorists and the insurgents. And I don't think they will be able to secure the border, even though they established border police and they have some forces on the border. But there are clear routes and ways that where the insurgents can cross. That is why I have great respect to Mr. Yusuf Zai Saab, but I would say because of those cross-border issues, that's why, we can say, the Mullah Fazlullah, the TTP leader, was killed in Afghanistan region and some other leaders. That's true. But when it comes to the Pakistani side, Pakistan got the sixth largest army in the world. So there are more expectations from the Pakistani side to not only keep eye on their borders in Pakistani side and also help their neighbor to fight the terrorists. and share the intelligence and all the other major major steps. And with having such a big army, how can you have the top?
Okay, so that's a fair point, Mr. Zubair, and I want to then ask Mr. Rahimullah. Mr. Rahimullah, just put in context for our viewers the efforts that you know of that Pakistan has taken against the Taliban within this country or other extremist groups. What are the efforts that this army, as Mr. Zubair mentioned, this very large army, what are the efforts that this army has taken to fight terrorists here?
Yes, we know we have a very large army. We know we have got a large defense budget. But these military actions against the militants started in 2003 in South Waziristan. Then it shifted to North Waziristan and the rest of the tribal areas. And for the last 15 years, Pakistani military has been fighting these militants, mostly Pakistani militants, but also others. Now, even after 15 years, we don't really have the kind of stability which we want. We also have a problem in Balochistan. Baloch separatists, they are fighting the Pakistani state, and there have been military operations. Then the Pakistan government says that this, the progress they have made against militants has come at a heavy cost. 70,000 people, who were killed, civilians and soldiers and policemen and others, and $123 billion losses. So, yes, we have a large army, but somehow it's not easy to fight a faceless enemy, an enemy which is very committed, an enemy which is receiving support from outside. We have very open, brazen Indian interference in Balochistan. We have captured, Kulbhushan Yadav, who was actually distributing money and resources among the Baloch separatists. And some of these Baloch separatists also are based in Afghanistan. Mir Balach Murray was actually killed in Afghanistan. So, these are the problems which we are facing. We don't expect the Afghan government or the Afghan security forces to fight all these 20 different groups and defeat everyone. It's a very big challenge. They also have the support of the foreign forces and the Air Force from the U.S. and other NATO members. But still, they are sacrificing and they are struggling. It's not easy. So it has not been easy in Pakistan. The army would have liked to control all these militants. It would have liked to, make the border secure. But somehow it is not happening. That's why they have now decided to fence the border. And I still don't believe that fencing the border will resolve every problem. So there has to be real, sincere cooperation between the two countries. The U.S. also must, tell the Pakistani government, the Afghan government, and other stakeholders about its objectives, its end game, as we say, because there is a lot of concern as to what is wanted by the U.S.
Right.
Or by some of the other stakeholders. That's why stabilizing Afghanistan has been so difficult. 40 years of conflict, and now since the last 17 years, the U.S. intervention, somehow initially things were improving, but then 2005 onwards, we have seen that insecurity has increased. So that's why, if we keep repeating the past, somehow we will not be able to move forward.
Okay, gentlemen, I just want to take a very short break, and I'm going to say a goodbye to Mr. Zubair Babarkhail, a journalist who is joining us live from Kabul. We, of course, appreciate his insight as he provided. We will ask Mr. Rahimullah to stay with us as we want to continue our conversation with him. Viewers, we'll continue to talk about this trilateral meeting that took place in Kabul between the Chinese, Pakistani, and Afghan foreign ministers, and the memorandum of understanding signed there, as well as further cooperation, be it on security, terrorism, or even in trade, something which we'll discuss in this next segment. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us, viewers, as we continue to discuss this trilateral meeting that took place in Kabul today between the Chinese, the Afghan, as well as the Pakistani foreign ministers, and the memorandum of understanding signed there. In this half, we're going to have Mr. Rahimullah Yousafzai, who is still with us. He's an analyst who is joining us from Peshawar. And we're now joined as well by Mr. Rasool Bakhsh Rais, who is an analyst and also international relations professor at LUMS here in Lahore as well. Mr. Rais, thank you for joining us in this segment of the program. I wonder what you make, Mr. Rais, of the importance of the meeting that took place in Kabul today, the memorandum of understanding, the cooperation between China, Pakistan and Afghanistan over terrorism.
I think this triangular relationship has been in the making. There are many other parallel forums which engage Afghanistan and Pakistan together. There is one with the United States and also one with Russia as well. So the efforts are that there should be a negotiated settlement and this war must end. And that is to the interest of immediate neighbors of Afghanistan and the people and the country itself. Peace is what is the most important thing for Afghanistan. It has been in different cycles of war for 40 years. But then when you have prolonged wars and too many powers and actors, and non-state actors intervening into conflict, then conflict becomes a business for some, and they benefit from war. We have seen throughout history, and this is more evident about Afghanistan. Let us see that whether or not the warlords and different factions within Afghanistan are on the same page when it comes to concluding this episode of 17 years plus American intervention into Afghanistan. The immediate interest of China and Pakistan is that Afghanistan should not be used as a base for terrorism. As we have seen that those who attacked the Chinese consulate in Karachi have connections with Afghan intelligence agencies and also Indian intelligence agencies that are operating from within Afghanistan. So this memorandum of understanding with that background is very important, that that China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan cooperate with one another to fight terrorism.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Yousafzai, I wonder what you make of Pakistan's view on all this, because the foreign minister Qureshi said, and this is something that Prime Minister Imran Khan had also said, that Pakistan is now vindicated. Pakistan's call for dialogue throughout these years, ever since the United States got involved in Afghanistan, it has been for dialogue to take place. And, the United States thought at one point in time it could militarily defeat the Taliban. That has been proven wrong. Pakistan has been proven right. What do you make of that, Mr. Yousafzai?
Every country, including the U.S., was saying that they believe in a peaceful solution. Even Trump's policy announced last year in August, which was military focused, but he said that in the end we want a dialogue with Taliban after they become weak. So I think they were paying lip service to peace process. In fact, they were indulging in more war, more fighting. The American ambition to win the war militarily did not work. That's why now they have been forced to negotiate directly with Taliban, accepting the very old Taliban demand and asking Pakistan for help, even though earlier Pakistan was being heavily criticized. So in a way, Pakistan has been proven right, but it also increases Pakistan's responsibilities, because as Pakistan was advocating a negotiated settlement, now the Americans and the Afghans, they're asking Pakistan, okay, you try to help us. Pakistan has been trying to help. If you recall, Pakistan managed to hold the first direct face-to-face meeting between the Afghan Taliban and Afghan government on 7th of July 2015 in Murree. We also played a role in arranging an earlier meeting between the Afghan government and Afghan Taliban in Urumqi in China, along with the Chinese government. So we have been trying to help it's not going to be easy because there are many stakeholders. You know, the Afghan government even now is not really, united regarding the peace process. There are different voices. Even the opposition political parties in Afghanistan have set up their own negotiating teams. They don't trust the Afghan government's 12-member negotiating team. Ashraf Ghani talked about a 3-phase solution. His ally and chief executive, Dr. Abdullah, talked about a 5-phase solution. And they say it will take 5 years. So I think, somehow I foresee hurdles being created by the Afghan government because they do not want to share power. They want the foreign forces to stay as long as possible in Afghanistan. So we have to contend with all these different, agendas, different people trying to pull the peace process, in different directions. That actually will become a big hurdle.
Mr. Rais, do you agree with that? Because, Pakistan gets criticized a lot, doesn't it, Mr. Rais, from Afghanistan, especially when it comes to the situation in that country. But as I said earlier, Pakistan is saying it's been vindicated. It's always been calling for dialogue. What do you make of Pakistan's role in all this and the role it can be playing going forward as well?
I think Pakistan took a very principled and very pragmatic position, which was rooted in its very careful reading of Afghan history. When the United States decided to intervene in Afghanistan and remove the Taliban government, we advised them against that venture. We told them that apprehending Osama bin Laden and his associates is quite possible. It can be done. You have to be patient. But they did not listen to us, and they invaded the country. And you see, the consequences have been horrendous for the people of Afghanistan. The physical dislocation, the destruction, the insecurity, and also the fragmentation of the society along different lines. Then when it came to the Bonn process, we told them to include the Taliban. And they actually handed over power to a tiny minority groups, and they were not united themselves. They were primarily warlords. United States partially relied on them to remove the Taliban. I don't think that they had played a major role in that, but in the post-Taliban state building and nation building and the kind of regimes that the Americans wanted to build, they gave everything to what used to be Northern Alliance, and which was defeated practically by the Taliban. Had Taliban been included in the Bonn process, hadn't they been included in the political process, I don't think the war would have continued for so long. So they did not listen to us. And also, whenever we had strategic dialogue with Americans, or they consulted us on Afghanistan, we told them to negotiate with Taliban. For more than 1.5 decades, American leaders, 3 different administrations, they insisted on war and defeating the Taliban. We told them that you cannot defeat them, and you cannot really weaken them to the position that you will get a settlement of their own liking. Because in such situations, the Afghan history tells us that they will simply disappear. You won't see any adversary when they are weak. They will come back when they have the opportunity, and this is exactly what happened. Began happening in 2004 and 5. It is good that they have accepted our position, and I agree with Rahimullah that it has added to Pakistan's responsibility. We can bring the horse to the water. We cannot make it drink. What depends is basically the negotiating positions of Americans, of our government, and the Taliban. We cannot give them a settlement. They have to reach a settlement. We can help them negotiating, but what is the outcome of negotiating? I don't think Pakistan will ever have control over that.
Very well, gentlemen, we'll leave that as our final word, but of course we appreciate both of your insights and your analysis here in the scope. That was Mr. Rasool Bakhsh Rais, analyst and international relations professor at LAMS, and we were also joined by Mr. Rahimullah Yousafzai, who's an analyst, and he was speaking to us live from Peshawar. Viewers, as our many guests throughout this program have discussed, this is obviously a complex situation in Afghanistan, but the role that China is playing right now is a positive one, and of course Pakistan from day one, as it says, has been calling for dialogue, for peace talks from day one, and Pakistan says it has been vindicated, both the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister saying that. What will the impact of these trilateral talks be? What will the impact of these MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, be about counter-terror efforts? We'll have to wait and see in the coming days what the ground realities become like, and if they do change, and if these efforts by these three governments pay off. That's all from me for the moment, though. Thanks for watching Scope. I've been Waqar Rizvi.